do you guys think you have in common with your parents?
If I had the decision to choose my parents, I wouldn't choose those people.
If I could choose, I would definitely choose my mom.
I don't want you to help me, I just need to tell you how I feel.
I've always been the odd one out.
At some point or another, we've had issues with our parents.
I've been putting up with some stuff.
What's up, everyone? Today, Roundtable, we talking parents. You got them, you don't. You love them, you don't. But at some point, they was in your life. Today, I got a wonderful group of people, and we're gonna get right into it. When we hear the word parents, tell me what's the first thing that comes to y'all's mind.
It's complicated.
Yeah. Interesting.
Safe.
That's good.
Hey, man, I love that, yes.
You.
I would say mine for sure is growing.
Everything.
Oh,
It's good. I think right now I'm in a healthy space with my parents,
yeah.
but I'm happy to say that because I think the beginning of this year I wasn't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that comes with I guess, the space of life where I'm at, where I'm maturing, I'm growing. I feel like I'm at that space now where I'm beginning to see my parents more as people rather than my parents.
I definitely think you get to a certain age where you just really deep and realize that they're humans too. They're not just these people that raised you and told you everything you had to do. They're actually people like you. And that's why I love when I see certain posts and it's like, be gentle with your mom or your dad because once upon a time they were 10 and 4. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so true. And I feel so bad, but it's like, it's true. It builds a relationship better because you can, you know how they say, I'm not one of your little friends. Now my mom is actually my gist buddy. If you're Nigerian, you know what I'm talking about. We be gisting, you know, but once upon a time, that was never gonna happen.
No, for sure.
So-
No, 100%. And I think, well, just maybe you, which is great. But I'm stuck on what you said, Shilpa, with complication, because a lot of us are in that space where at some point or another, we've had that issue or many issues with our parents. I want to know your take on that, for you personally.
Yeah. Well, right now is a really interesting time in our relationship because we're wedding planning. And that is a very turbulent time for any South Asian with their parents. So I moved out when I was 23. And I think that has made the heart grow fonder a little bit because the space between us made us appreciate each other a little bit more. But I think back when I was spending a lot of time with them, it was different because it was always like, I didn't understand their personality and they didn't understand my personality. And neither of us really had taken the effort to understand each other. And I get the whole point of it's their first time living too, but then I'm an advocate of it's your first time living too. So why is there so much pressure put on the children to take the high road and understand them when, you know, they've got 20 years, 30 years on us, so they could take a few steps here and there. So I'm conflicted. It is complicated for me. As I get older, I've gone through a period of putting myself first, and I think eventually I will come around to putting them first. But I think you need to take that time to put yourself first for a bit. Otherwise, you will have nothing to pull from.
I think I'm there.
Yeah.
So I never moved out when I went to uni. I went to drama school, but I still lived at home because I went to drama school in London. So I'm an actor. So I did my first tour, thank you, bro, this year. So this year from January to April was my first time living by myself. And I learned so much about myself. And it was like I came back to London and I'm seeing my whole house in a different way. Yeah. And I was just like, I've been putting up with some stuff. Do you know what I mean? You start to see everything that you didn't see before. And I think when you understand who you are, what your boundaries are, what you want for your life, and you start seeing, I guess, your parents doing things that are against that, it's a tricky thing because they're like, what are my parents? Because but when I deeped, if I had a friend that did this, it'd be an issue.
I'm gonna check them.
I would check them. If somebody that I don't know was doing this, I'd have an issue with it. So why is it okay that because they're my parents, it's okay? And I think that was where I realized that actually hard conversations with your parents are important to have.
And the thing is you definitely have to have the humility to have that empathy. Once you move out on your own, you're like, oh, they were running. I was like, I remember when I lived out on my own, with my cousin, I would just see some foolishness, not from him, but from people we'd have over. And I was like, man, my parents was right. I was like, man, they was right. Because these folks is on some foolishness. So I know, But like, it's definitely difficult to be in that space because like, as a kid, you're like, no, my parents are wrong. Like, I'm grown, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know what's right. But when you have to come to that realization, like, there is validity in what they're saying. It's like, are you able to be in that space where you can humble yourself and have that humility for, and like that respect and empathy for your own parents?
Yeah, I think that's where I am now of like, you know, being 25, I've not lived at home for a while, went to university and, you know, now live in London. And I think growing up, being in a Christian household, you know, my parents were really well disciplined with us and, you know, had lots of boundaries. And like you say, growing up, you could think, oh, you know, why are you guys so strict with this or blah, blah. But actually I think the older I get, the more I realize like that was protection. And like actually there's like safety in boundaries and like there's freedom when you know what your boundaries are. So I think for me, it's been actually, that's helped me to have a better relationship with them now because you have protected me from so much pain and like heartbreak and all that kind of thing. And now I feel like they're my safe place emotionally, spiritually. And I'm very lucky. And I think, again, getting older, come to realize that's not a lot of relationships that a lot of my other Christian friends even have with their parents, let alone like people outside of faith as well. So I realize, you know, I'm very blessed with them in that regard.
To springboard off what you just said, and I guess I'm not open this to everyone, what would you say communication is like with your parents? Because they had my sister quite young, at like 18, And so even though there was a lot of like boundaries in place and things that they told us to protect us, I think the way they communicated a lot of the lessons growing up wasn't the greatest. Because they were still young and they were still growing. My parents was always like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. And I know that, like looking back in hindsight now, it's that, okay, you didn't want me to make the same mistakes you made. But I think that it put pressure on me as a kid to like be this perfect person that I just really couldn't be. So whilst what they were doing was rooted in, I guess, a healthy values and Christian morals and stuff, I think the way they communicated that was very confusing for a kid. So what would you guys say your communication is like with your parents? Do you feel like they have an open space with them? Do you feel like...
I think the communication was good in the sense of I understood why it was, we don't do this, or like we're encouraging you not to do this. Or at least like, you think about what the consequence of what this would be. Do you want that for your life?
Right.
They definitely didn't get it perfect all the time. And I think there is still that element of like wanting and desiring perfection of yourself and holding yourself to a high standard, but also recognizing that you need to have grace. And like, I still feel like my parents have shown me grace, mercy and love unconditionally and all of that. So I think there's moments where they've probably done that really well and other moments where they haven't because they're imperfect people. And like I say, they are human, their first time doing it. But ultimately, I feel like that has really helped us nurture a really quite beautiful like friendship and relationship.
I feel like for me, why I say interesting is because like my parents were the kind of parents where they would explain everything, why they're saying no, and why you have to just deal with that consequence. And as a child, I like that better because I've always been the kind of person that, I study psychology, so I need to understand the why. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like when you have parents that understand the kind of child they have, it also makes it better. So I literally studied psychology to understand them more while they were trying to understand me. So the communication was always, it wasn't easy, but it was like I was allowed to communicate. I feel like some people aren't allowed. Like I will see people with their parents and they're like, they can't question. I'm like, what do you mean you can't ask your mom? Like, I can ask my mom. And I never knew that was like not a norm. So now that's blossomed even more with my mom, not so much with my dad, because he's first generation Nigerian Benin man. So what he says goes, but my mom would come and be like, he said this, but this is why he said this. So I feel like that balance really helped. So now being 26 and she being the lovely age that she is, we can communicate. We can communicate very well, no matter what it is. Like when she's checking my siblings, I could be like, I think you were wrong there. Like they didn't deserve that licking.
You sound like my sister. You sound like my sister.
So, but with my dad, it's I'm getting there with him. It's like I remind him, like when we were younger, you just didn't let things be good because of how you communicated. So he's trying his best now. And like you said, it's like he had so much time, but I'm just the kind of person where I was like, I get he had time, but he didn't. So let me just let him do it now. Do you know? And I feel like that's what really helps our communication now.
So would you say there's any family values or, you know, things that you firmly hold from your parents that you are grateful for, or any ones that you think maybe you're ungrateful for?
I think one of probably the biggest lessons my parents have taught me, but unintentionally. So for them, one of the biggest values was family comes first.
But I've seen the flip side of it as that actually, I don't think family should always come first, because I've seen them be hurt so many times by their family. And they always just think about how, you know, blood is thicker than water, etc. But actually, just because someone's blood related to you and someone's family on paper doesn't necessarily mean they should be the family that you choose. So I think when it comes to my values, thinking about family, it's actually that family is so much more than biological family. It's about the family that you choose. And even with the best intentions, when you do put your family first, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to put you first and they're going to hurt you. Yeah.
It's personal.
And as a fellow South Asian, I can take that is so common. And like my parents had it instilled in them that, like, for example, if anything toxic happened, you can't talk about it outside of your family circle. And for me, like, that was the most imprisoning thing when I was growing up, because I was like, there's so much going on at home and I have no one to talk to about it, because my parents would reinforce that friends won't be there for you, friends won't be there for you, we're always going to be there for you. And then that kind of gave me a bit of a weird setup for when I make friends later on in life. But now when I look back, I have some of the greatest friends. And even though I struggle opening up with them, obviously for these reasons, it's been like proven that they are actually sometimes there for me more than my parents. And I think that's okay. I don't think that's like appreciated enough in South Asian culture.
Yeah. On the point of like choosing your family, yeah, I hear you, because I feel like in quarantine was the first time I actually looked at my family and been like, wow, like I live life with these people every day. They're in my house, but because they're in my house,
You don't notice
it's so easy to bypass them. Do you know what I mean? And it was about realizing that, wow, you got all these friends, Josh, yeah. You spend so much time with your whole family right here that you don't spend that much time with. And I realized that it's a decision to choose to make your family your friends.
Exactly.
Because like you said, even though they're your family by blood, some people might be like, actually, if I had the decision to choose my parents, I wouldn't choose those people. Do you know what I mean? So, but guess what? That's who you're stuck with. So with the choosing family thing, I definitely hear that. And I think choosing your family, especially choosing your parents, is like, I think one of the most humble and mature decisions you can make, because you're taking into account the fact that they raised you, and in that, they may have hurt you, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have a question off the back of that. Do you guys think you have anything in common with your parents?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Guys, I watched a video back of myself the other day, genuinely, and I was like, my dad has made that face 1 million times. I'll be speaking, so my mom's a therapist, yeah? My mom being a therapist is like a very touchy thing, because I love it, yeah? And I feel like it's given me a lot of like emotional intelligence, and I've got a lot of language to describe how I feel. I feel like I wear my heart on my sleeve, but at the same time, having a mom as a therapist is like, sometimes you're over-therapizing everything. You just need to let life be. You know, I was talking to my girl, and then I was like, sound like my mom. Genuinely. So like, I realized, like, growing up, I used to be like, don't want to be like my parents. No. And then I catch myself doing things. I'm like, I'm definitely their child. So it's a bit funny.
Does that make you feel good or bad?
It makes me feel a bit stupid, because for so long you're always like, nah. But they make you see us up doing it, you're like, oh, you know what I mean? But I don't think it's a bad or good thing, because it's not negative things they do. It's just things they do that kind of annoy you a bit. Do you know what I mean? But it's just funny.
That's an interesting take on the question, because I was actually talking about whether you have similar interests or not.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That is a really interesting take.
For me, I have the same birthday as my mom. I was born on her birthday, so we are the exact same person.
So good.
So it's like, whenever she doesn't agree with something, I'm looking at her like, we have twin telepathy. You should be agreeing with everything. So it's like, if I could choose, I would definitely choose my mom. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, she's great.
I don't know what we have in common. Like, I think there's obviously shared values and like watch the same TV, or like we've been to the same places. But if I think about my career path, for example, like that's so disconnected from, I guess, my parents' interests. Like,
What do you do?
so I work in the mental health field,
Okay.
like in equality, diversity, and inclusion. And it's something I don't get, and I think that's completely fine. And I guess it's making peace with the fact that, so I'm one of three. I'm the middle child, and it's about accepting that there's different siblings. We're gonna have like a different level of commonality with your parents, and I've always been the odd one out. Like, I'll always disagree. I'll always have the different thoughts. I've always been like the black sheep. And when I was younger, I used to feel really bad about it, because I was like, I feel really disconnected from my parents. But actually, I think it's actually worked out for the better, in the sense of like, we're not constantly clashing because we're the same people all the time.
Yeah. No, like, it's interesting. Like, for me, like, I kind of like follow that space. Like, my parents' interests versus my interests, like, honestly quite different. Like, like the only thing that I can like say for sure outside of like we love God is like my father loves football, and just to clarify, I mean feet and ball, not that American forces. Just have to clarify that. So like we for sure like share that passion, but like with me and my mother, I'm just like, I mean we like tennis. Tennis is great. I love tennis. But like outside of that, you know what I'm saying?
There's nothing.
There's not a lot, you know? And I like reflect a lot. Like, don't get me wrong, like my parents instilled some wonderful principles like into me. But at the same time, like I felt like a lot of the time that like I kind of had to raise myself. Yeah. Not because they were negligent by any means. Like I'm not about to speak maliciously about my parents. It's just like culture clash. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like they grew up in their respective countries. So my mother's from Spain, my father's from El Salvador. So like there's like that European and then like that Latin like cultural mindset versus me that's growing up in the United States. So like there's like a fusion of different cultures that are going on at home. And I know that is heavily affected my upbringing and like the way that we see things, like the discussions that we have to have because we're all seeing something differently. Yeah. So I want to ask with that, because everybody here is the son of an immigrant or daughter, forgive me, son or daughter of an immigrant. So I'm curious to know, how has that cultural upbringing affected you as a child?
Hey, she said, let me get ready.
She said, I was waiting for this question.
So I myself was born in India. We were only there for a couple of years, but my parents were very much like raised, set in their ways, all in India before we came over. And when we came over here, we were straight away integrated into a very Christian, very South Indian community. So it was kind of a bubble where all of the values stayed the same as the 90s in India. And we've all been raised with those same values, which some of them are great, like the attitude towards society, the ability to care for one another. I love all of that, but I think the expectations that are put on, especially girls, it's so different. So I am completely a pariah in that community because I'm the first one to move out without getting married, the first one to travel, first one to be openly dating someone of a different faith. I, at this point, have annoyed absolutely everyone in that community. But that took a lot of like digesting for my parents, because in that community, obviously like they need to show face as well. And it's really weird to think that me doing all these normal things puts them to shame so much. So that I think has been the biggest disconnect between me and my parents, because I like to say, I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. I don't think I'm doing very badly in life. So the fact that you feel like such a disappointment all the time because of this like pressure and the way that Indian communities work together, it's a shame, really. Like a lot of people go through that, and a lot of children, regardless of gender, to be honest, go through their entire lives feeling like a disappointment for no reason. And I think that is just like one of the biggest things from like an Indian background, the Indian immigrant background, versus growing up in Britain where everyone is so like liberated and people don't think twice about doing things, where we will like doubt and guilt until we're basically like shaking for every single decision. Sometimes
Parents don't realize things until it actually happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially like if we're talking like African households and talk about, I want to be an actor. I'm not talking about myself. My parents aren't actually immigrants. They're born here. I was born here. Even my grandparents, my Jamaican side was born here, but my mom was born in Sierra Leone. But like, it just in African culture, if you say I want to do this, they're like, no, you're not, until you make it. And then they realize, okay, actually I was wrong. So I pray that that's your, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the perfect like simple example of that is that I wanted to become a doctor at one point. I wonder why. And then I went into biochemistry, did my degree in biochemistry and realized that I don't want to go into that anymore. And in India, if you study a degree, you can only work in that field. But I was like, that's not how the UK works. And I was the only one saying to my parents, like, that's not how the UK works. I'll figure this out. I'm oldest sibling as well. So no one had like gone before me. So I was like, just trust me on this.
They were stressed.
They were stressed. So I was like, trust me on this, I'll figure it out. And then once I did, and they were like, oh, you can actually move into like something like banking from biochemistry. I was like, yeah, no, I told you. So now they're like, yeah, okay, fine, that's all right. But they stressed me out for years, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. My dad's Indian, my mum's English. All of his family were born in India, apart from him. He was born here. And he, youngest of 6, black sheep of the family, everyone, brought up Hindu, everyone having arranged marriages. He was the first one to kind of become a Christian, not have an arranged marriage, marry a white woman who's also Christian, leave the house, go to university. and like basically break every kind of like norm, I think, within that family. And I'm seeing the benefits of that, of like the relationship that I have with him is completely different to the relationship he had with his parents. And I think it's, I just think it's really interesting, like you say, I can see those kind of cultural things and expectations within other family members on that side. But again, like I'm thankful that they're both were PE teachers, head teacher, that kind of thing. And they really actually advocate for me to pursue my dreams as an athlete. And that's what I do now for a living. And like, because they were like, you know, we understand sport, you know, they've both been in the world of sport before. And they were like, you know, you've got to put your all in at this age and we're going to do the best that we can to support you in that. And there must be the reason that I'm, you know, doing my job that I love and going back to like commonality, like again, like I share the same interest with them of sport. So being able to, you know, speak to them about the mental struggles of performing and all that kind of thing is great because I know that they understand me, but also frustrating when sometimes you just want your mum to not be a therapist and just to sit there and just listen. Like, I don't want you to help me. I just need to tell you how I feel.
I feel like you guys are getting tired of hearing about my mom, but I...
No, we love your mom, man. I feel like I knew your mom.
Yeah, thank you. We love your mom. For me, it's like, I look up to her so much because I grew up in an abusive household. So my dad was abusive to her. And so having 5 kids, she's got 5 children. I'm first girl, second born to 5. And it's like, although having this man beat on you and then you now have to take care of kids, she never let that make her weak. Like, I used to do pageants and be on like little things and I'll come to her and be like, Mom, I want to go to this, and she'll take me. And it may not do well, they may not cast me, but whatever it is I wanted to do, she always took me. And that just instilled that value of keep pushing from very young. And I didn't realize it, I just thought I was spoiled. But growing up, it made me realize it's like, even if things don't go the right way, you don't get what you want, just keep pushing. And on top of that, if life is hard at home, still try to have a brave face and still, you know, be able to keep pushing. Like she's pushing from being, you know, dealing with that, but also the fact that she's teaching me how to be someone that doesn't let circumstances define me. So I feel like that's why we look up to her. And it's also a thing where like, she was always like, when people go through things, they tend to close up. That was never her. She will speak about it. I know people say, oh, you should never tell your children what you're going through. You shouldn't cry in front of your kids. And she kind of like broke away with that. She's like, no, you need to know that it's okay to cry. You need to know that it's okay to be soft and to be sad and to be happy and to have all these emotions. So it's like, if I didn't have a mother like that, I probably would not be who I am today. So yeah, I look up to her so much.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
So mama.
I think for so long growing up, I used to see my parents as superheroes. Growing up, I was convinced my parents were millionaires. I swear down. When they used to say, do you think money grows on trees? I'm thinking, no, but I know you got it. It's only now that I'm older and I realize, I'm like, damn, my parents really, do you know what I mean? Because like, my parents always made it a thing to make sure that we had some kind of extra curriculum going on. My little brothers used to play football. My little sister was doing like ballet, all that kind of stuff. And like, that's 5 people to cover in terms of expenses of all this kind of stuff. And I think that even though my dad got into filmmaking quite later on, he was always working a job like, so from my dad, I just learned like, work hard. Like, I think my work ethic is one of the biggest things that's kind of taken me through life. Like, I believe I'm talented, but I think my work ethic is something that is undeniable. Like, every room I go into, I'm like, I'm gonna do my best. And I think I learned that from my dad, because seeing the way that he literally just had kids at such a young age and just thought, like, okay, well, I need to make it work now, and just was working. He always made sure that there was a roof over our head, there was food in our bellies regardless. And then my mum was always making sure that, you know, we were doing something, and my dad would obviously always support that financially. So I guess the value of excellence was instilled in me from young.
And it's interesting they all say that, like, and I don't know who else relates to it, personally, and in no derogatory way at all. Like, I never like saw my parents that way, because at a young age, unfortunately, I had to get to the understanding, like, these are just regular people. Like, no, like, this is my parents, like, you know what I'm saying? But I'm just saying, like, there were moments where they were just very honest about what was, like, going on in our life. Like, there were certain periods of life where, like, didn't have a lot of money. And I remember, like, age 12, like, it was probably, like, one of our lowest points that we had. And it was around Christmas. And, like, I was excited. It's like, ooh, Christmas, you know what I'm saying? And they had to be honest with me, like, hey, Jacques, like, we just don't have a lot of money right now. Like, literally the only thing they got me was a $10 gift card to Walmart and Kung Fu Panda 2 on Blu-ray. But because of that honesty, like, that they were able to give me at a young age, like, I understood, like, these are people as well. Like, that you were saying earlier, like, sometimes we don't get that until we're older. You know what I'm saying? Like, we create this separation for our parents. Like for like, I feel like as kids we do that with like all adults. Like I used to think like teachers used to live in the school. You know what I'm saying? Like and like I never saw like my parents in that light. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I understood like, hey, these are people that are like figuring out life as well. I obviously admired them, and there were things that I definitely like grabbed from them, and like that was so important to me. Like, and I was able to get some wonderful things from them. But I can't never say I was in a position I was like, oh, these are my heroes. Like, I don't know if anybody else relates to that, or if all of y'all have this like beautiful thing.
For me, like, the thing I love about my parents is their openness and like their awareness of things, but the awareness doesn't always translate into change, and that's something I've accepted, and that's okay. And I think that's where the fact that we're all just humans, like we can be aware of perhaps how things have influenced us, the way we think, the things we've done, the things we've said. And it doesn't necessarily mean overnight you're going to be healed and you're going to be this incredible new person. And that's so fine. Like, I can't expect that of them, and I hope that they don't expect it of me either. And I think so growing up, like what put me into the world of mental health was my own mental health experiences, and coming from a South Asian background. We don't speak about mental health. We have a common phrase called log kya kahenge, which means what will people say? And that what will people say basically like runs everyone's life. And I think my parents have been very open to acknowledge how toxic that is, and how I just don't want to live by that. And it means that when we go to weddings, when we go to family events, people will ask me, oh, she's the one who does the mental health work. And of course it's uncomfortable. Of course, sometimes they mean it in a really derogatory way. And my parents will see that, and they won't enforce it on me. But I also understand that they can't just remove and uncondition themselves from all these years of narratives and norms, but they're at least being aware and open to it. They never stop me from anything that I do. And I think for me, what really touched me was I only found out when I was in my mid-teens that I think the reason why mental health was so difficult to talk about at home was because my dad's dad died by suicide. And that was something we never spoke about. We never knew that was the case. But to know that they still were open to at least allowing me to experience life in the way that I want to experience it, even if they feel uncomfortable whilst watching me do that.
So, okay, I'm curious as well. Are there any principles like that your parents still like instilled, morals, values, whatever, that you still hold to now?
I have a daughter myself, and she's 3. So one thing my parents really instilled in me is respect. And I love that to the point, like Nigerians, we call elders auntie and uncle. And so with my daughter now, she calls every person auntie and uncle. And they find it so cute, but it's like, no, she's learning this respect from young, because it's important, because it also makes you feel good in yourself that you're able to see someone that's older than you and give them the required respect. And I feel like for me, that makes me feel good, but it's also because I'm remembering my values that my parents taught me, and that shows I'm still true to that person that I was, and now have a child. So it's like I've got so much that I'm bringing along, and then sometimes I feel a bit lost. So when I do certain things that my parents taught me and instilled in me, I'm like, okay, you know what, she's still there, you know, that aspect of it. And something that I don't agree with my child now, like, you know, the crying, like, she's only 3, so there's certain times when Tanisha's gonna get whatever she wants, because because I want that child to look at me and think, in a situation where the world doesn't wanna give me what I want, I should look to my mother or my father and they will make it happen. That should just be enough. I communicate with her, like my 3-year-old will talk like us. She talks like a literal adult. So that's the flip side. It's like, I keep the respect value, but I also bring in a communication value, if that makes sense. So it's like, it kind of clashes, because you want to keep a lot of things that they taught you, but at the same time, you want to make your own traditions as well.
I think growing up, the one thing I wanted from, especially my dad, was to explain why something was wrong. I feel like there was a lot of it. And I feel like, but you know what I mean? Like, the similar to what you said earlier, in terms of like, you know, they were trying to like protect you, keep you safe. Like, I didn't know that. I was just growing up getting told, don't touch the fire. And I was never told why not to touch the fire. And so I think growing up, it made me a bit of a rebellious kid. The way my mind works, if you just tell me a statement, I'm like, okay, but why? My mind's so curious, I'm always gonna ask why. And I feel like my dad, growing up, really spoke in riddles. I don't think he realized it, but it would always be like, the way he would get me to do things, it was very like, by the book. And if I didn't do it by the book, it was wrong. So I grew up just feeling like a failure, like I could never get it right. My dad told me to wash the dishes with this method, but that method didn't work for me. I wanted to wash the dishes like this. In my head, I'm like, the dishes still got washed. But then it's interesting because recently, I don't think my dad will mind me saying this, but recently my dad, about 6 months ago, he realized after 46 years of living or whatever, that he's got autism. So now I can understand that the way that my dad's very regimented with me growing up, that's just how his mind is. I never knew that. So growing up, it's just, I feel like our minds clash because if you're saying do A, B, C, and then D, but I'm doing A, C, D, and then D, like, still getting done in my mind. So I think I wish that growing up, he would have just explained things a bit more, like that communication you're talking about. Because if I understood, oh, you're trying to keep me safe because you love me, then I would have maybe made decisions differently.
So you're any different with your own, like...
I feel like that's why I think even just the way I've grown, I've tried to become such a communicator, even sometimes to the point where I realized sometimes I over-communicate because that wasn't, do you know what I mean? That wasn't there.
That's the problem, same.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? So like, even with like, I'm in an interesting space because like, even what I said to you guys with like the relationship, like, I just used to grow up hearing my parents say, don't get into a relationship, don't have sex, don't and I just used to think, well, I have to be this perfect man then before I can get into a relationship. And so I was always anxious and scared of relationships. Even if I liked a girl, I'd be like, no, you can't like them. I would think that's bad because I just associated relationships with negativity. So where I'm at a space right now where I do have a girlfriend, that took a lot of like, I guess, work for me to kind of remove those anxieties myself that my parents placed on me. And also by telling them, you know, you placed a lot of anxiety on me growing up. I can literally hear my parents in my head, like even though they're not even saying these things anymore when I was a kid. So I had to actively like, be like, Joshua, what do you want for your life? Where are you at in your life? Do you feel like you're mature enough to, and it was about me kind of, you know, having that conversation with myself and with God and knowing where I'm at, because your parents don't always know. They think they know you, but it's like sometimes you actually don't know me and the things I've been through, and so
And that's a choice, isn't it? I think I realised that maybe about 15, 16, like living at home, and like I have an older brother, 2 years older, and we had very same environment, very different experiences with our parents. He's very curious about the world, me not so much, and I think I know what I'm doing. I'm playing sport after school. I don't want to do it. And I think I think what I learned was actually there's a choice of like, okay, you start hiding things from your parents. And I think, and I could see my brother doing that a bit, and the relationship, the kind of relationship he was having with my parents. And then I was like, I now have a decision to make whether I open up and then let them into this space to protect our relationship. Like, will that flourish our relationship, or will it, you know, and it's scary because you open yourself up to be like, you know, judged or like, or rejected in different ways. And actually, I think I made the choice to be like, actually, no, like, I love these people. I want them to be part of my life. I don't want to feel like I'm hiding things from them. I can't lie to them. They can tell when I lie anyway. Like, I'd be rubbish at lying.
That's so interesting. I became a master liar as a kid.
And so I'm so actually, you know, I made that decision to trust them in that, and that is why I think we have the relationship that we have. And I think, you know, real connection is vulnerability and honesty.
One thing, slightly different angle on the question, but I think one thing I did understand and learn from my parents and a lot of other parents in the community is the importance of a healthy marriage in parenting.
Go there.
Now we're talking.
Go there. Wow.
Because that is one thing that I've like really is important to me, that you build a family on like stable foundation, mutual respect for each other, and you live your life together before you start having kids. Because a lot of people in the South Asian community don't get the chance to do that. And that shows up in very different ways later on. So it could be resentment towards the children that actually get to experience things. It could be resentment once the children leave, you don't know what to do with yourself. And you build up this kind of like emotional dependency on the children. And then that kind of filters down. And it's just like generational trauma that's passed on unless someone decides, actually, let me just live my 20s, get it out of the way, and then everyone can be happy. That is one thing. And then just like, the ability to get to know each other before marriage. Like dating is so, so important, and it's been a massive thing for me. And again, another reason why I date openly, and you know, I've had a breakup openly as well in the community, which is an insane thing. But I think it just goes to show that you can actually find your right person, and it's okay to. In fact, it's important to. That's how it's shaped my view on marriage, the ability to have a strong foundation before starting to have kids and things like that. But how do you guys feel about that? How has your parents' marriage shaped your current or future marriages, if anyone is married?
It gave me night vision, for real.
Night vision?
Yeah, because I can see through anybody, because for me, it's like, my dad is a class A narcissist. I still love the guy, we're cool, the relationship, I can call him and talk to him, but it's like,
he showed me what to run away from in a man, you know, and in a husband and in a father. He was present. My parents are divorced now, but that was only when I was like 23. So my whole childhood, I had 2 parents, but it's like, I just saw him and I always should think like, I would never be with someone like you know, because of like just certain things, how he treated my mom, how he treated us. Like, he felt like the fatherly duties he did was like, we were lucky he was doing them. Like, homeboy, you're a dad. You're supposed to do this. You know what I mean? So it's like now, when any guy in the past I've dated showed respect, my father, I'm gone. So now I know it's important for me to be in a relationship, in a marriage that I feel seen, I feel loved, they feel seen, and they let me know that they feel seen. Because I feel like a lot of the time, we want to let other people know that we need to be heard, but we forget that they also need to feel comfortable to let you know that they're seen or they're not seen as well, you know? So that's something that's very important for me in a marriage. Like, I'm not currently married now, but I have a partner, and it's like, every day I think about my parents' relationship, and I put that into when we have communication, it's like, this is important. As much as it is to me, it is to you. And it's like, if I'm showing any signs of X, Y, and Z, you can tell me, and I will not feel a kind of way, because people think communication is key, but it's comprehension. Because if you don't even understand what someone's saying, you can talk all day long, but you need to actually understand where they're coming from. And that's something that I deep with my parents, that was like, she felt a kind of way, and he just was not even trying to even understand her. He just felt like, you know what, I'm the man of the house, and that's that.
And that is what I think I've learned as a man now. Because growing up, anything I asked, it was just like, ask your dad. Even if my mom has an opinion on it, my dad has the final say. And I used to look at my mom like, do you not have a brain of your own? Like, genuinely, and it's something that used to annoy me, because I was like, I don't get why. I didn't understand the whole dad is the man of the house. And the reason why I say that is because, so my mom's a therapist, right? So my mom's done a lot of work on herself. She didn't necessarily come from the greatest household, but she's done a lot of work on herself. So the way my mom shows up, she tried her best to, you know, give each of her kids everything they need. Whereas I feel like my dad, the way he parented us was just this one blanket. I'm gonna give all my kids the same thing. And it didn't work, because I'm not like my brother, and I'm not like my sister. I'm different. So if you're just gonna give me what they have, it might not land the same way. And I think that growing up, the more that I grew up with them as well, I saw the difference in my parents. I'm like, my mom seems really mature. She's done a lot of work on herself. And my dad, it feels like there's so many elements of you where I can still see you're a kid. I can still see you haven't dealt with your relationship that's not good with your dad. And it's seeping through, and I can see it, you know what I mean? And so with the whole kind of like man of the house thing, for a long time, it used to really annoy me. Because I was like, I have to give respect to this person that I don't even feel like deserves it sometimes. You know what I mean? And it just, do you know what I mean?
I'm curious to hear all of y'all's definitions when it comes to what it means to be a good dad.
Yeah. I think it means to be sensitive. And the reason why I say that, when I say sensitive, I mean as in like aware of what's going on. Because I think that I used to think, you know what, when I become a dad, I'm gonna give my kid everything I didn't get. And I've come out of that mindset because I realized, actually, I don't know what it's gonna be like to be a kid whenever my kids, whatever age they are. You know, I know what it's like to have been the ages they've been, but I don't know what it's like to be the ages they've been in the years they're experiencing. So I just wanna have a sensitivity where I have a relationship with my child where it's open that they can express those things to me. And I don't go into parenting thinking I know it all. Because I think if you go into parenting thinking you know it all, there's a lot you're gonna miss. There's a lot your kid's gonna go through that you have no idea about. But if you create that dynamic of, I know what I'm talking about, they're not even gonna share it with you. So I think what makes a good parent is just sensitivity to what's going on, because you don't know what life is gonna throw at you. You don't know what life is gonna throw at your child. But if you're sensitive and you're open to whatever comes, you're able to navigate as you go along.
No, 100%. Like, I'm bounce off that joint. Like, for me, humility. Cause like, that's the, like, you know what I'm saying?
I'm glad to say it, but
like, I'm not in a place right now, I don't got no kid. And you know what I'm saying? And that's not the goal anytime soon. But I know that when I do have my own child or children, I want to be in a space where, like, regardless of my life, regardless of my experience, regardless of what I've been through, I can still be wrong. Because like you said, and I really love what you said, we could be the same age at some point. Your point of life at that age versus mine could be so different. So like, who am I to believe I know it all.
Yeah. For me, a good parent is someone who sees their child as more than just their child and sees themselves as more than just the child's parent. That's literally it.
That was bars. So much bars.
Yeah, there we go.
I think for me, as a Christian, I think the best parents, or my experience of when my parents have been the best, is when they're most in love with Jesus. I think because they're more in love with each other, they're more in love with me. And I think it flows from that.
Nail on their head.
Yeah.
Good.
I feel like with me being a parent is also my Christianity as well. So it's like just having grace, understanding with her, because like she's a very curious and she's me. Like, you know how you say your child can be nothing like you? My mom tells me any day, take your time with her because you're dealing with you. So I'm grateful that I have my mom to tell me that. So I have like profound understanding and grace of her. Like she'll make a mistake and look at me and I'm like, hi, it's fine. Like she'll make a mess and I'm like, it's fine. If she's really naughty, she might get a shout in, but it's like, she's not scared. And I feel like that's what's important. I feel like you should be never scared of your parents. You should never feel like you have to hide something from them. And I feel like that's what is a parent to me. Like I want her to grow up thinking, I can tell my mom anything. I'm going to the moon. I can tell my mom I'm going to be there. You know, because I was scared to tell my parents some things at a certain point, no matter how great they were, that fear was there. So I'd rather the fear be out of respect, not out of they're going to do something wrong to me. So that's what I think anyway.
To be a good parent, I think it's important to not put any responsibility on the child to make you feel good. I don't think children should owe you anything. It's up to them to decide if they owe you something. And I think most children do end up feeling like that, but you should not. I hate the term, you know, like I put a roof over your head, I fed you, that kind of stuff.
You were meant to do that. I didn't ask to come into the world. I didn't ask to be born.
I didn't ask for this.
I feel so passionately about that. And at the end of the day,
I'm passionate with you.
choose,
Who you are.
you choose to have a child to better your life. You know, you now owe that child the responsibility of a good quality upbringing. But at the end of the day, that child is a whole person other than just your child. They have duties, responsibilities, personalities, different aspects of their life that they are now free to go and explore. But you should not place any responsibility on that child for making you feel good. That's all.
And financial responsibility should be cut out.
Hey, y'all gonna start a whole new conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Run back to 10 minutes.
Yeah,
That's the one.
But love should govern it all. If your parents love you,
for sure.
naturally you'll love them back.
Yeah,
It's
that's
the
the
same
thing.
with the relationship with God. You love them because they love you, not for any other reason. You don't owe them. It's the love. You should if you want to bless your parents, bless your parents. If you want it, Janine. So.
And on that lovely, fantastic note, I just want to thank each and every one of y'all for watching, tuning in, being attentive with us. I want to thank everybody that's here on this table. Shout out to each and every one of y'all for being present with us today. And that has been Roundtable Discussion on 48 TV. We out.